The Apollo astronauts didn't lie to us. Not about the science. Not about the moon. But they didn't tell the full story either. For decades, astronauts came back from the moon and described it in the same way. A quiet, gray, lifeless place. A world where nothing changes. A world that has been the same for billions of years. And honestly, everything supported that idea. Thousands of photos, detailed scans, years of research. All of it pointed to one simple conclusion. The moon was predictable. But in April 2026, something changed. For astronauts flew around the moon aboard the Orion spacecraft. And almost immediately, they started noticing things that didn't match what they expected. Colors that shouldn't have been there. Shadows that didn't look right. And flashes of light on the surface that shocked scientists back on Earth. They weren't looking for something strange. They were just observing carefully. And that made all the difference. The crew spent hours taking turns at the windows, because there wasn't enough space for everyone at once. Two would observe, while the others waited, then they would switch. It was slow, careful work. Not exciting on the surface, but extremely important. They even used special covers to block light inside the spacecraft, so reflections wouldn't ruin their view. Everything had to be perfect. One of the first things they focused on was a massive structure called the Oriental Basin. From Earth, it's almost impossible to see clearly. Even past missions had only seen parts of it. But from their position, they could finally see it properly. And it didn't look like the images they had trained with. It was bigger, more detailed, more real. One astronaut described it as looking like a perfect circular mark pressed into the surface. But even that didn't fully capture what they were seeing. This became a pattern throughout the mission. Everything looked different in real life compared to photos. The moon wasn't flat and simple anymore. It had depth. Huge elevation changes that photos completely failed to show. Mountains that felt massive. Valleys that looked darker and deeper than expected. From orbit, the moon felt almost three-dimensional in a way that surprised everyone. One astronaut later said that this was the most shocking part. How different it looked compared to everything they had seen before. Another moment that stood out was something called the Terminator line. This is the boundary between light and darkness on the moon. At that line, sunlight hits at a very low angle. And suddenly, every small detail becomes extreme. Shadows stretch far across the surface. Small rocks look like giant structures. And some areas become so dark. They almost look like holes in reality. It was one of the most visually intense things they had ever seen. Then came something even more surprising. Color. The moon wasn't just gray. The astronauts started noticing subtle shades. Browns, greens, slight variations across different regions. These colors come from minerals like iron and titanium in the surface. Cameras had captured hints of this before. But human eyes were finally able to truly notice the differences. It was like seeing the moon properly for the first time. And then, there was one of the strangest features of all. A bright swirling pattern on the surface. Something scientists still don't fully understand. It doesn't have any height. No depth. It's completely flat. And yet, it stands out clearly against the darker surface around it. The leading idea is that it's connected to a strange magnetic field under the surface. One strong enough to change how the moon interacts with space particles. But even now, no one knows exactly how it formed. It remains a mystery. Halfway through the mission, something incredible happened. The moon moved between the spacecraft and the sun. From the astronaut's perspective, the sun disappeared behind the moon. What followed was something no human had ever seen before. A solar eclipse from space. And not for a few minutes, but for nearly an hour. The sun's outer atmosphere formed a glowing ring of light around the moon. Stars became visible. Planets appeared in the darkness. And the moon itself was faintly lit by light reflected from Earth. It was quiet, still, unreal. And then, something unexpected happened. Flashes of light appeared on the surface of the moon. Quick, bright, gone in an instant. The astronauts saw it multiple times. These were meteoroid impacts. Small rocks hitting the moon at incredible speed. On Earth, they would burn up in the atmosphere. But the moon has no protection. Everything that comes toward it hits. Each impact leaves a permanent mark. Scientists watching from Earth were shocked. They didn't expect to see so many impacts in such a short time. And this raised an important question. If humans plan to build a base on the moon, how safe will it really be? Because even something as small as a marble, moving at extreme speed, could damage equipment or even a habitat. By the end of the mission, the crew had taken thousands of photos and recorded hours of observations. They didn't land. They didn't collect samples. But what they did was just as important. They looked carefully. For years, we studied the moon through screens, through data, through instruments, and we believed we understood it. But in just a few hours, human eyes noticed things that we had missed for decades. The moon wasn't as simple as we thought. The colors were more complex, the surface more dramatic, the activity more frequent, and one of its most visible features is still a complete mystery. We thought we knew the moon. Turns out, we were only seeing a rough version of the truth. And when humans finally go back and walk on its surface again, they won't just be exploring. They'll be discovering how much we never understood in the first place.